You are listening to the podcast engineering. My voice is still cracking. It's early in the morning here, folks. It's 7:12 a.m. Anyway, this is the podcast engineering show, session number 21.
I feel like we should have a drink.
Oh, Mary, come on. It's early for that.
But we're 21.
Oh, jeez. Now I get it. Here's my band. Ooh. Yes, welcome to the show. I'm struggling over here. I'm reaching for sound clips. I don't know what else I'm doing. I made myself tea and I drank like 2 sips. Anyway, welcome to the show. This is the show where we talk all about podcast engineering from the audio engineering perspective. We don't talk about marketing. We don't talk about listeners and how to, format a blog post or anything except audio, the hardcore audio side. My name is Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for Forbes and Dun & Bradstreet and many business authors as well. Every episode of this show, we bring you an expert and we chat about these important topics, actually. I have a background in audio engineering in the music business, and since I entered podcasting about 4 years ago, I noticed a huge lack of audio engineering skills in podcasters. I mean, it's not their fault. They weren't trained for it. And maybe you weren't trained for it either, but that's okay. That's why this show is here. And this show is brought to you by Podcast Engineering School, which is a school that I'm launching this fall. I'm actually doing a little pilot program this coming Sunday, but actually by the time this is posted, I'll have done it already. So I'm sure it'll go well. It's kind of like a test just to see how long it takes to teach people, to teach students EQ and compression, not only in a computer program or with a plugin, but also, with a physical EQ and compressor, twisting knobs. I'm really psyched about that. Of course, I have Barry with me, and yes, I put the fader down from the music, so I won't put up the music like I usually do. Barry, are you ready? Mary's here. You know that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
See? All right. He's here. Mary's here. Barry likes it. Barry, what is Mary going to need to really get a good sound on this recording that she's making this morning? Because Mary's recording this too as a test. We're going to talk about that. What is she going to need?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
All right. Well, I don't know if she has that. Man, anyway, this show is also brought to you by Fractal Recording. That's my production company where we produce the highest quality podcasts for companies, authors, and networks, podcast networks. You can hear this show anywhere you hear a podcast. iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, radio, podcastengineeringschool.com is the website. My intro, I feel like my intro flow is losing it a little bit. Anyway, my guest today, and this is cool because I met Mary at Podcast Movement, which was about a week and a half ago. Oh, no, 1 week ago. Mm-hmm. Why do I think it's a week and a half? I don't know.
Time flies.
It feels like a long time. It was like being in another world in Chicago, and then now back in real life and getting, hit over the head with all kinds of busy work, and it's good to be busy though. So Mary Mazurek, she's an audio engineer. She came from the music studios, similar to myself, and then she moved over to broadcasting. She has 25 years experience, which is funny because she's only 28 years old. So
you're sweet. You're my new best friend.
I mean, that's what her Twitter said. Anyway, she's now at WFMT for the last 23 years. It's a classical station in Chicago, right, Mary?
That's right.
Yeah. And so you work in Chicago and you live in Chicago, and that's where Podcast Movement was. So that's one good reason why you attended that. So it was I'm happy that I met you there, and I'm happy you can come on the Podcast Engineering Show. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you were at my Q&A session. Which was cool. Do you think it went well, by the way, my session?
I did. I think you explained things really, really well. I think I was looking at the audience, and they seemed to get it.
Oh, thank you, because everyone's asking me, how'd your session go? And I'm like, I think it went well, but same with the podcast. When you're the host and you do an episode and everyone's like, how was it? And sometimes it was good, but sometimes you're like, I really don't know. I can't tell.
But the good thing is you can make it good when you edit it.
Well, that's true. Although sometimes you can't edit out the suck. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you have to have a special knob for that.
There was a cartoon once with something that had a suck knob. I forget what cartoon that was.
I think it was from the Far Side.
Right? All right, we have to find that. We need to find that. The suck knob.
And I've seen others like talent knobs and whatnot.
That is so funny. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff on this episode. I'm really psyched about it because you and I spoke after the Q&A session.
Right.
And it was just fun meeting you and talking with you, a fellow audio engineer. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. Mic placement, mic choice in the studio and in the field. And by the way, if you're listening to this is the beauty of this show. We bring on people who have a lot of experience and different experience. So you never know what the guest is going to say. Just like a throwaway comment could literally change the way you engineer shows. So I'm psyched about it. So we're going to talk about a lot, but you said that you're also recording us on your end as a test using Audition, is it?
I am, yeah. So I'm coming to podcasting through a little different avenue. So I do broadcasts for WFMT that I prep for podcast after the fact, and Web actually handles all of the RSS and the hosting and stuff like that. So I don't do any of that.
So you go on site, you do a live broadcast with classical music, you record it, and then you send it back to the studio, and they tweak it up, and they put it through the RSS feed, and they do all that.
Right. So I record it on site usually, or if I'm in the studio, I record it in the studio. But I'm also usually sending it out live. We are putting out music live as it's happening.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Right, and I think a normal person would ask you, "Ooh, isn't that stressful?" But we love it, right?
Oh, I know. Actually, the post-production is sometimes more stressful because if I put something out live, it's done.
Right.
And then I don't have to think about it.
And you can just tell yourself, that was awesome.
Exactly.
So what's your setup right now? So you don't usually do interviews over the internet and record them, is that right?
I do occasionally. I actually have one coming up Monday because the producer's in London. So he's going to Skype in and the talent is here. So I'm going to do a Skype session that way. But it's not my regular day-to-day thing. And talking with you over the internet is not something I do every day. So I'm actually using this as an opportunity to do a test because I'm actually thinking, hey, I've got the chops. Why don't I do my own interview podcast at some point? So
nice.
I'm using this as a little test.
So what's the setup of your test? Yeah.
Okay, so here's my high-tech studio. I'm in my apartment on a main street in Chicago. So if you do hear a car go by every once in a while, we'll call that local color.
Nice.
But I'm in my bedroom in the back of the house. It's a 12 by 12 by 12 room, which is awful for audio. It is the worst place you could be to record any audio because the surface is so parallel, and the reflections off the walls excite the frequencies. So
and the same frequencies.
Yeah, exactly.
The same standing wave that stands between the 12-foot walls on this in this direction, same in the other direction, and same up to down. That's crazy.
Yeah, so think of your bathtub full of water and dropping the soap in. The waves are gonna bounce off the bathtub wall and then back across the other wall and back and forth. Yeah, in audio land that creates a resonance, which we don't want. So I have my microphone on a stand, and I'm standing in the closet.
Sweet.
Yeah, because clothing makes pretty good absorption. So This is my high-tech fix.
Nice. And you're standing up.
I'm standing up just because I'm not really voiceover talent. And you can breathe better when you're standing.
Yes. I was just thinking that yesterday. I actually sit down, but I sit up completely straight, literally tall and straight. Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And my background is music. I went to music school and I did some voice stuff, and I'm trying to employ all that now, so I get a better speaking voice.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll tell guests, if they're not quite as experienced, things like, okay, sit up straight, raise your eyebrows, smile, because that actually brings out certain qualities in the voice. And it actually makes you feel a little more enthusiastic and excited about it, So little tricks like that.
And now, so tell everybody about your pop filter.
Oh, my pop filter, also a high-tech fix.
This is awesome.
I have proper pop filters at work, but here I am in my apartment. So my pop filter is an embroidery hoop and pantyhose. It works.
And you just had those two things handy in the house, because I don't even know what they are, and I wouldn't know where to find them.
See, that's when the girls are in charge of the audio.
Oh, man. There you go. A little advantage. So
yeah, I just happen to have pantyhose around.
Yeah, part of a studio bundle on Amazon. Pantyhose, hoop. All right, so you're recording this as a test into audition. How are you getting... well, first of all, you're using a new microphone. Tell us about that.
I am. My friend Stephanie Beecher over at Shure actually worked on this design. It's the MV-51 USB microphone, and it's a pretty substantial piece of hardware. I gotta say, it is heavy. It is like a steel grill. It's got that classic Shure grill on it, and but it's a USB mic. So I'm trying that out and seeing how that works. I don't know. How do I sound?
It actually sounds very nice, and being in the closet helps too, because I don't hear a lot of the room. So that's good.
Good. Yeah. And I've got that kind of honky white woman quality to my voice. So hopefully
Really?
There's less of that. Yeah.
No, it sounds actually very smooth.
Oh, good.
Like the low mids are, not too much at all. So it does sound smooth. Yeah. Clear and smooth. So the MV-51 is a Shure microphone, right? Yeah. Okay. And you have it on a stand?
I have it on an AKG tripod stand, yeah.
Okay. And
it actually has a kickstand itself, so you could put it on your desk. You don't even need a stand.
You reminded me of something. Here's my beef with desktop microphones or stands. They never seem to be high enough.
Yeah, that is kind of the case with this, unless you have it on top of something. And I mean, if you don't have a proper mic stand, you could put it on top of books or something like that.
Yeah, see, that's to me, I don't know. I don't understand that. Why they're creating microphones that sit on a desk that sit 6 inches above the desk, and for anyone to get close to it, you'd have to hunch over.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a hunchback. And stay there for the whole duration of the podcast.
Which is terrible for the voice, because you're all hunched over, you can't breathe, and that posture, you're kind of sad in that posture, so you're not enthusiastic.
See, you're bringing up a really good angle of recording, is that when you're recording the human voice, the voice is the instrument. And then
you're right.
And then you can, so this posture and even the facial expression that you're talking about, this is like tuning that instrument, right?
It is really, yeah, exactly.
So that's important to know. So if you're listening, make a little mental note of that one. I think that's important. Plus, it helps people feel better as well. Keeps them more positive when they're standing up, breathing well, and they have more energy, all that stuff. And energy is very important too. So you're going USB into your computer right now, and then
correct. Yeah,
how are you recording?
I've got my interface on Audition set to this MV-51. It just sees it. Okay. So you just have to make sure you set it and it's not accidentally recording off the computer mic, which sounds terrible.
Oh, God. Horrible. So wait, are you recording me?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I'll have to, this is part of my test.
Yeah. I'm
you know what? I'm hearing you through the microphone. The microphone has a headphone jack on it, and I can set that as my output. So I'm thinking maybe I am, but I'll verify that after we're done.
Yeah, I actually don't think you are, because your mic is going onto one track in Audition, and my voice, we're connected through Chrome, through the Cast system. So I think you're probably just hearing me from
maybe
Cast.
that's it. Yeah, so it's a learning experience for me too.
Yeah. So the question is then, how do you, and this is, it sometimes can get tricky when you try to do routing within, in the box, because, if you have I think with Macs, it's a little easier, but with PCs, sometimes routing a signal from, let's say, Chrome to Audition I think that's pretty much impossible. I mean, I know there's some software. I know there's one called Sunflower. There's some like software that actually does all the routing and stuff. I've never actually tried one because actually I'm afraid to try that.
Okay, because that's like a new area for me. I'm still finding out all about all of the stuff like Ecamm and those kind of softwares because I just don't deal with that. But if I decide to do my own interview podcast, I better get pretty educated about that.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, we're using the Cast system through Chrome, and that's recording us both separately in a pretty good quality. So if you're recording yourself locally, you could, for instance, if I was a guest on your show right now and you had a Cast account and you were, and this was recording in Cast, so right now you would be recording yourself in Audition, and when everything is said and done, you just go onto Cast and you download my file.
Okay,
and
that's cool.
Then you line it up. Yeah.
And then that's kind of redundant. It builds some redundancy too, which is good because there's nothing worse than, you think you recorded something and it's not there. That is awful. That is the worst feeling in the world.
Oh, it really is. I did that once, probably a month ago.
Oh, no.
What happened was, sometimes I do sessions where there's like 3 people connecting in 3 different ways. Like someone will be on the phone, someone will be on Skype, and someone will be through Cast.
Okay.
And so I do have different computers. I have 4 computers here, and I have a broadband phone box, right, that brings a phone signal into my board. But I come direct out of my board with all the different signals, and I go into my computer, and I record everything on its own track. But what happened right before the episode, someone was trying to connect on Skype, and they couldn't. Like their headset crapped out or something, and they're like, "Oh, we'll have to switch to the phone." And I said, "Okay, no problem." So I got them up on the phone, I got it into the board, but what I didn't do was arm that track in my multi-track recorder. So we started recording. About a minute in, I look over. Thank God it was only a minute. And I looked over and I realized that I wasn't recording the phone call track. And that's when you do it on a phone. I mean, in Cast, it records a version of it in Cast, but the phone, it's only being recorded in one place. So I was like, oh my God. So I immediately hit record. It started recording. Okay. Luckily, I take the stereo feed off my board and I go into a handheld digital recorder in stereo though.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So you have something.
So I had it. I had something. I had to, kind of chop it up and make sure it, fit seamlessly. But I did have that 1 minute of the guy on the phone.
Oh, I bet you were relieved at that.
Yeah. I mean, because especially only that it was a minute, because if it was the whole interview, what happens is then I wouldn't be able to run the noise reduction on that phone call track alone.
Oh, right. Because it's mixed in with everything else.
Because it would be mixed in with everything else. So
yeah. Redundancy is so important. And I do that too when I'm in the field. I usually have 2 recording devices with me because if I'm recording somebody's concert performance or something, I mean, that moment is gone when it's gone.
Right.
So, that was the most gorgeous performance you've ever done. Sorry. So
could you do it again, please?
Yeah, right. So it's not going to happen. So redundancy is really important.
Totally. Very important. All right. So let's get into, let's talk about recording voices. So you record classical music, of course, and you also record lots of voices in studio and on location.
Right.
So let's talk about mic choices, maybe the different types of mics, the different uses for mics that you use.
Okay. All right. So I'm actually really lucky to work for WFMT. We have some of the best sounding voices anywhere, I think. They are just amazing sounding announcers.
Nice.
So they make my job really, really easy. So I don't have to do too much. But in terms of microphones, I think your listeners know about dynamics and condenser microphones. So dynamic is working by a principle of magnetic induction. So you've got an element moving in a magnetic field, converting the acoustic energy of the voice into electricity. And condenser microphones, the capacitor is doing that. So the capacitor is acting as a diaphragm. So it's moving back and forth when I talk into it and charging and discharging. So that actually needs power. So I think mic choice is really, really personal. If you have a choice, at WFMT, we use Shure SM-81s, which are small diaphragm condensers. And if you use a small diaphragm, so the diaphragm is the thing you talk into, and it moves in, and it makes an element move, and you create a voltage from that. Right. The small diaphragm has small surface area, so it's more susceptible to plosives and popping. So with those, we need a very big windscreen. So we have big foamy windscreens over it, and then we have a roll-off filter on the microphone itself that we use to help with those plosives. So the plosives, as you might know, are the popping. So if I get really close to the microphone, pop, 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 that sort of sound.
Yeah. It's not even popping. Your pantyhose is doing a wonderful job.
I know, aren't they? Isn't that work? Okay, so if let me take away the pantyhose and we'll see.
All right.
So, you'll hear some plosives. So there it is. So that was pretty painful, right?
Well, actually, when you got real close, it got really bassy and you could hear the pee, but it was so warm. It was almost like a warm and fuzzy pee instead of like a loud and nasty pee. Yeah.
Oh, and that's another thing to bring up, proximity effect. So that's proximity effect. So any microphone that's not an omni microphone has that characteristic, and you can work with that characteristic. And the closer you get, the darker it starts to sound. So as I get closer, I'm talking through the pantyhose here, so I'm not popping. So I'm kind of bassier and thicker, and you can work a microphone like that, or you can move a little further back and get a little more airiness and space in the voice. So it's you can totally work the microphone that way. And this is even before you even start EQing. Right. So, and I'm a big placement girl. I will do placement before I reach for any EQ. EQ is a fix in my mind. So if I can, optimize my setup beforehand, I don't have to do much fixing.
That later. Totally comes from the music production because
it totally comes from the music production side of it.
Yeah. So when you're recording music or instruments, that's one of the golden rules of engineering is, get the right mic in the right place, and you shouldn't have to EQ it. I mean, in a perfect world, yeah.
Yeah, in a perfect world, yeah.
Of course, you tweak it later, but yeah.
Yeah, you tweak it later. But, the more EQ you put on, the more phase shift you have, the more artifacts you have. So it's always best to get your sound as good as possible before you start reaching for that, at least in my opinion.
So in terms of mic placement, I mean, with musical instruments, it makes sense. You can kind of, just move the mic and hear different things. What about for voices though? Do you have any examples or stories of when you kind of maybe, mic choice or mic placement with a person, with a voice?
Yeah. Again, the station uses SM-81s a lot. That's our kind of go-to microphone. The Shure SM7 is a classic broadcast mic. The RE20 is a classic broadcast mic. But I think they're really personal because microphones have different characteristics and different colorations to them. And they may complement or be detrimental to a certain voice type. Right. So, the SM-81 for me makes me sound like a little bit like a honky female. So I can make it work for my voice. Fortunately, I don't really talk on that much. But I actually really like Neumanns for my voice because they have that open crystal clarity thing. And most Neumanns are probably overkill for the average podcaster because I have some that, are $1,000 each or more. So that's kind of overkill. And I use those mostly for music anyway, but I just happen to sound pretty good on those.
Right? I mean, I wish I had... I always wanted a U67, like an old one.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful mic.
But, I don't know, one of these days, like, I don't know. I'm doing this thing. This is a little bit of a tangent. But... hey, why not? It's relevant. So it's about a U67. It's relevant. So
yeah, it's your show. So hey.
And here's the thing: I co-host this other show called the Profit First Podcast with this guy Mike Michalowicz, and he wrote a book called Profit First, and it's all about how to, when you have a business, how do you bring in money and make sure you make a profit? So his whole thing is you take the profit first. It's like you don't pay all your bills and then see what you have left and say, ooh, I guess that's my profit. You do the opposite. You take your profit first, and then with the money that's left, you figure out how to pay your bills and how to make your business work with that money. So you have your profit first. So I'm doing that. And so with my business, I have a profit account that's, money's going into my profit account all the time when clients pay me. So, and the profit account, here's the whole point. The profit account is supposed to be like, it's almost like you're supposed to use that money for like fun. It's almost like a celebration kind of thing. Like you're not supposed to reinvest it into your business or, buy something boring or I mean, you could use it to maybe pay off your mortgage if that's really important to you, but he suggests have some fun with it. So it just hit me now that, you know what, I should wait until my profit account has enough money, and then I should maybe go find a used U67 and make sure it's the real deal and make sure it's like, refurbished and stuff with all good stuff. So wouldn't that be cool?
That would be really cool. And it's still like work related. So isn't that fun when it's like, you know what? It's really fun because that's like multitasking. It's taking care of two things. Like it's my new toy, but it's useful and I can take a tax write-off on it.
Yes. And then all I would have to do is soundproof my studio here a little bit more. And then I could probably use that mic. I could probably podcast with that mic. How sick would that be?
That's a beautiful mic. Yeah, that's a beautiful
The other thing I want to say, and then I want to ask you more about, we're going to talk about EQ and compression, actually.
Okay, sure.
The other thing is, I just got an RE20.
Nice.
I was using an SM7B for a few years, actually, more than 2 years.
Yeah, actually, they're both classic broadcast mics.
Yeah, and I like them both. I think I like the RE20 better because it's a little fuller sounding. So here's the thing. I have, as a listener of the show, you probably know, I have a Neve Portico 2. I have a channel strip.
Okay.
That's my mic pre-compressor EQ, right? Very expensive. Real sounds just tremendous. But here's the thing. So I got my new RE20 and I recorded myself talking into the RE20 completely flat. Like no EQ, no compression, nothing. Just a flat signal. And then I took that flat signal and I ran it through my Neve Portico 2, which is basically my EQ and compressor. And so then, I could just keep replaying that recording while I'm sitting there EQing and twisting knobs and compressing and EQing. And, I think I did good, but there's something about EQing your own voice that, I don't know. It's like, if it's someone else's voice, I don't know. I feel like I can just nail it pretty quick.
Right.
But when it's my voice, it's like, oh, I don't know. Does it sound good? Because it's your own voice. So I'm almost...
you're really invested in it. You're not you're really biased and,
Yes, because I hear that voice in my head whenever I talk. Anyway, but so Mary, if you're ever in Colorado Springs, you can maybe you can come here and EQ my voice.
I could do that.
That'd be cool.
Okay, I'm putting that on the list.
We'll make a video, for YouTube and everything.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
All right. The EQ challenge. Ooh,
that sounds like fun. Yeah, and you can see if you can get the honky white woman sound out of my voice too. So.
Oh, jeez. Right. We can. I just thought of that. The EQ challenge. Maybe I can do that at like next podcast movement or something.
Oh, fun.
Have a booth and have people just, well, you can EQ stuff to make it sound good, but you could also destroy it too.
Oh, you so can. You so can. And actually, you probably should try both, because I think you even mentioned it at your talk that, with in terms of compression and EQ for that matter, you got to take it to the extreme to see what it does.
Right.
Just to see what it does. I mean, you're probably not going to use it at the extreme, but okay, this is what it sounds like when I boost 3K all the way and it distorts and it sounds like, somebody's sticking you in the eardrum with a pencil.
Right.
Okay, I know what that sounds like. I don't do that, but at least I know what it sounds like.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
Got to go to extremes. All right. Let's talk about EQ. Well, let's talk about processing. Once you record something, if you're going to go back and enhance it, what is your general process? Like, what do you start with?
Okay, so again, I'm saying I'm a big placement person, so I try to get the best placement because I can actually affect the tone by how I place it. Because as we were talking about proximity effect, as I get closer, I get more bassy.
Yeah.
And as I move further, you start to hear more space and air. And actually, air makes a pretty good compressor. You just don't want to get too far away from the microphone, otherwise you lose some intelligibility and stuff. But actually, air will even out the dynamic range even a little bit, just the space between your voice and the microphone.
Really?
So you can play with those components a little bit. But once it's recorded, I start thinking about, is the guest, do they get really loud or really soft? The thing that annoys me to no end, and I hear it on podcasts, is when somebody laughs really loud.
Oh.
And I want to throw my headphones across the room.
Oh.
Or they cough and and they don't edit it out, and I just want to throw I want to throw them across the room. I'm like, how dare you, invade my eardrums like that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes down to working the microphone technique. And
Right.
I noticed that a lot. And it's funny. I've never been a singer, but I've taken probably a few classes about microphone technique. And of course, when you look at videos of singers on TV, like the big boomy singers, like Mariah Carey is one for sure.
Right.
When she hits a loud note, man, she moves the mic like 2 feet away from her head.
Right. So she's already she has a feel for that, and not everybody does. And also if you have like a USB headset mic, you're not getting away from the microphone. It's there. It's fixed.
Right. Oh, that's why you can't use a headset. So what I do, and this is what I encourage people to do, because right now, yes, I'm talking normal volume. I'm right on the microphone. I'm literally, maybe 2 inches away, maybe an inch and a half away from this thing. If I'm going to laugh loud, and I don't know, no one told me to do this, I literally move my body back about a whole foot, and I point my head up.
Right.
I'm literally probably a foot and a half from the mic, and I'm not even facing the mic anymore. I turn to the side and I'm like, ha, 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 and I laugh.
Yeah. So that's another thing. You can be off axis a little bit too. That'll also affect the sound. So if I move to the side of the microphone, it'll sound a little bit different than if I'm right in front of it. And sometimes some guests benefit from that if they're very, have a voice that's very plosive or poppy. You can talk a little bit off to the side of the mic and kind of take care of that, because it's way more work to try to fix it after it's recorded. So,
right.
If you can get it beforehand, that's ideal. But sometimes you can't. And sometimes you have to go in and tweak.
Right. And the off-axis, that's a great little technique. And one of the difficulties is that you can tell a guest that.
Yeah, and they're not quite sure.
They move. They get excited during an interview, and then they just move. They move a foot to the other direction, and you're like,
That's
wait a minute,
true,
we talked
too.
about this. You're supposed to stay about right here.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely. I think headphones helps. I mean, some people don't like to hear the voice in the headphones, but I think that helps because I can tell how close I am, how far I am, if I'm popping or not. So I think we're all attuned to it because of what we do, but the average guest might not think about that, so they have to be instructed. So sometimes that helps, listen for these things. But again, they might be totally overwhelmed because they're like, oh my God, what am I going to say? Oh,
Right.
and then they forget. But that's the nice thing about editing too. You can have them repeat it.
Right, and then they squirm and they move around. What I have to tell people a lot is, so a lot of people come as a guest on a podcast show. They wear their earbuds.
Okay.
the earbuds that you plug into your phone to talk on the phone, they plug their earbuds into the computer, and what happens is that little mic that's on the wire, it flaps around and it hits things.
It does flap around.
So I have to tell them, hey, hold that wire in your hand a little bit away from your body, just so it doesn't hit anything.
Yeah, and then it's also kind of useful because some people get nervous and they start touching their clothes and it's noisy, or they have noisy jewelry on or something, and you just have to.
This one guy, he had to join. He didn't have a headset and whatever, so he was literally sitting in front of his computer using the onboard computer microphone.
Oh, that's awful.
And I told him, I said, look, you got a few things. I said, you got to stay close. You got to keep your head pointed at your computer, because if you point to the side, the voice is gone. And then I told him too, I said, look, don't touch your computer. And I gave examples. I was like, don't type anything. Don't wipe the dust off your computer, right?
Right.
I shouldn't have said that. You know why? Because halfway through this thing, this guy...
Don't think about pink elephants. Don't do it.
Exactly. He starts cleaning off his computer.
Oh my God, my computer's keyboard's dusty. You reminded me. Thanks. Let me do it right now.
Yeah, you reminded me. Thank you.
Oh, that's too funny.
And then it stinks because you can't interrupt the interview. I mean, look, if something really nasty's happening, you have to butt in. But you can't butt in for every little thing. You ruin the whole interview. So
yeah, the whole flow goes away.
All right, let's talk EQ. Let's talk frequencies. Let's start.
Okay.
I don't know. Let's start at the low end and maybe talk about the different frequency bands and what's there and what it means.
Okay, so I'm gonna break them down into chunks. And if you Google this, you can find different chunks and, how people interpret them. I'm going to do it into 4 just to be simple.
Good.
So on the low side of it, we're talking about size. So we're making the voice sound bigger. So I would say that would be around maybe 150 hertz and below. And that's going to be... as a female, I'm going to have some of that component, but men are going to have more of that.
Right.
So that size, we're trying to make it bigger. Above that is mud or warmth. It's mud if you don't like it. It's warmth if you do like it. But it's kind of the same range. So we're talking, Totally. So it's like an aesthetic thing. Do I like it? It's not totally scientific. It's a little bit of alchemy.
Right. Does this dress look good on me? The whole thing.
Right, exactly. Does this make me look fat? Does this microphone make me look fat?
Oh, that's a quote for a t-shirt right there. Does this microphone make me sound fat? Oh, jeez. A classic.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so and we're laughing and hopefully I turned my head.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not blowing your ears off with my transients. So we're talking about mud or warmth. So mud if you don't like it.
Right.
Warmth if you do like it. That's somewhere around 200 to 500 hertz, somewhere in there. And that honky white woman thing I find is mostly around 400 hertz. So we can think about EQ, we can add EQ, or we can take it away. So sometimes taking things away is very powerful.
Right.
So, if I have the honky white woman sound, I'm losing some intelligibility, right?
Right.
And I could boost mid-range, but maybe I should be taking away that honky sound at about it, and then it's going to be around 400 hertz. And as you start to do this more, you get to get a feel for where the EQ is. What frequencies are louder, out of balance, or not enough.
Right.
Okay, so that's mud or warmth.
Yep.
Above that is presence. So I would say that's somewhere around like 1 kilohertz, maybe even a little bit lower, but about 1 kilohertz to maybe about 8 kilohertz maybe. And that's going to give you some intelligibility. So, it's going to emphasize things like consonants and clarity and things like that. But if you have too much of it, it's going to be irritating and strident.
Harsh.
And harsh, yeah. Those are some good words to describe that. So, again, it's an aesthetic thing. If I like it, it's presence. If I don't like it, it's harsh.
Right.
So, And then in that too, there's a sibilance thing, and that's around 6K or so, and that's that sound, that SE sound.
And yep, S's and T's.
S's and yeah, that sort of sound. So, and actually, my pop filter is doing a pretty good job of minimizing that. I'm really proud of myself here.
Right? Oh wait, what is that? It's a truck.
That was probably a motorcycle. Yeah,
motorcycle.
I said, local color.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm like not in a studio. I'm in my apartment on a main street in Chicago during rush hours.
This
so
is nice.
You know.
So I feel like I'm in Chicago.
I
like it.
Yes, yeah. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. I like. I like it. I like motorcycles. Okay.
Oh, good. Yeah, come on back. Okay, so that's presence. And then above that, I would say air or sheen or something. So somewhere around 10 kilohertz and above. You can have a little bit of airiness to the voice. There's not a lot of that component in the voice. You'll get that more in music and instruments and things like that. But
right.
You can put a little bit of a sheen on that. Actually, that Neumann U67 has that.
Oh,
it's
man.
really pretty, sparkly stuff.
Right, especially condenser mics probably capture more of that fine, high frequencies.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, they're going to hear more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sheen. That's funny. Right now, I'm on the Neve Portico 2. The high frequency has only four frequency options.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, let me see what they are. Hold on, I'm going to look.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like, 4.7 kilohertz, 6.8 kilohertz, 12 kilohertz, and 25 kilohertz. Yes,
okay.
25, because Rupert Neve is a badass.
That's awesome. Why. He is awesome.
Why stop
it? There's a T-shirt. Do you have this T-shirt? Real Men Mix on Neves?
No, but I love that. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can only hear up to 20 or sometimes 18. But hey.
Yeah, actually, most of us probably less by now, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Because actually, that's a good thing to bring up, too, because there's this thing, I don't know if you're familiar with it. They're called Fletcher Munson curves.
Yes.
And it's basically
84 dB.
Right. So they basically went through people with normal hearing, and they discovered that we don't hear every frequency at the same volume. So certain frequencies are louder to us than others. And the louder ones tend to be a lot of mid-range stuff which is really helpful for us because that's intelligibility, and that's in the center of the speech range. So It's good we're more sensitive there because we need to communicate.
Right. Yeah. So basically the Fletcher Munson thing, like depending on the volume that you're listening at, like let's say you have a stereo system at home. If you listen at a soft volume, the frequency response that you're hearing is one thing. If you turn it up to mid volume, you actually hear the frequency spectrum a little differently. If you crank it real loud, you hear it even a little differently. So that's why.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you listen at 84 dB, that's the flattest.
I think you might be right.
Part.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
And that's why they say when you're mixing records, that's you can stick in that range or whatever.
Yeah, like TV I think is 79 and movies are like 84 and music is somewhere in between there. Yeah, so those are kind of optimal listening levels.
Oh, really? Okay.
That. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Fletcher Munson.
Yeah, can I tell my little story? Is it okay?
Yeah.
About Fletcher, about Harvey Fletcher, because I'm such an audio geek.
Please.
Okay, so the Fletcher in the Fletcher Munson curves is Dr. Harvey Fletcher. So he got his PhD in physics at the University of Chicago and went to work for Bell Labs in like 1916. And his job was to improve the telephone system because it was terrible then. Because you know the game Telephone? Because that was real. Because you couldn't talk to someone across the country on the phone system because it wouldn't carry the voice well enough. So you would have to connect with an operator who would relay your message to another operator, who would relay your message to the other operator, and it was poor quality and things get lost in translation and whatnot. Right. So it was a terrible system. So his goal was to make it better. But he felt like he had to understand human hearing better and perception. So that's why he with Munson did the Fletcher Munson curves just to see how people can hear. Right. But he also, at Bell Labs, he basically pioneered stereo recording in the 30s. We had stereo recording in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
And the 45-45 cutting method for record albums. So you have like the left side on the left side of the groove and the right channel on the right side of the groove.
Wow.
That was done under him. Also, he put together the team that did the transformer and all kinds of stuff. But I'm a member of the Grammy organization. I'm a voting member and a past governor. And they ask us for suggestions for Lifetime Achievement Awards and technical Grammys. So those aren't voted on by the general membership like the music is. So we make recommendations. So I recommended Harvey Fletcher for the 2016 Technical Grammy, and he was awarded it posthumously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it was so cool. The family was so happy. I was so happy that I could have made that proposal. So
right.
Yeah, I went out to LA and they did it as a separate ceremony. It's called Grammy Legends. It should be on PBS in the fall. But yeah, so the family accepted the Grammy. I got to hold it for a little while. It was really awesome. Yeah.
Oh, man, that is tremendous.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Oh, congratulations. That's a great story.
Thank you.
Good for him, too. I mean, right? These pioneers do so much work and drive forward technology. And that's all those, people like him, including him. Mm-hmm. That's the only way we can do what we're doing right now.
Exactly. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing this right now.
Pretty much.
Right.
I remember a guy who, I think he was a painter at one of the studios I was working at. Funny guy. He'd just come in and paint every now and then, but he was funny. And he wasn't an audio guy either, right? So he didn't, and he was like, he's like, man, I remember back, I think he was in I can't remember when it was, 60s maybe or 50s or something, when his family, probably 60s, his family or someone in his family got a stereo system with 2 speakers. And I think his father was like, what do you need 2 speakers for? You already got one.
Right.
It's just
if we want to hear the direction of the instruments, that would be helpful.
Just so cool, right? An old school person like, why do you need 2? You already have one.
Mono was just fine. Thank you very much.
Right. So let's talk compression just for a bit. So tell me about compression and how you use that.
Okay, and again, I said I like to use placement first. So again, just the space between the sound source and the microphone can give you a little bit of compression. It'll even out the sound quality a little bit. But if I get way too far, then I'm like, I'm way too far. You can hear the room and you don't have the intelligibility.
You're in a canyon.
Right. So basically you want to keep the voice levels even. You don't want to suck all the life out of them, which is, some people make that mistake. You might do it just to try it against extremes, just see what it does when nothing's at stake. But you don't want to be in your car and adjusting the volume every 3 seconds because, okay, this is too loud. No, this is too soft. I can't hear this. Oh my God, now it's blowing my head off.
Right.
Or, you've got a guest who's maybe not as well versed in voiceover. So maybe they got really, really loud and really, really soft and they laugh and it's loud and, you want the experience for your listener to be pleasant. You want them to be able to hear everything without having, to suddenly throw their headphones off because it all of a sudden got too loud.
Right.
So you're kind of evening out the dynamic range. So the dynamic range is the quietest portion of the audio to the loudest portion of the audio. So we're taking away some of that space. And I teach audio recording and production at Columbia College here in Chicago. And the analogy I like to use is a sheet of paper. So you have a sheet of paper, it's 8.5 by 11, and it takes up this amount of room. So think of the top of the paper as the peak of your dynamics, and the bottom of the paper as your quietest section. And then to compress that piece of paper, I crumple it into a little ball. So it's taking up less space, but it's more dense. So what the compression is doing is making the dynamic range less, but it's also making the sound more dense, and it's making it sound, I'm doing air quotes, louder. So it's like a perceptual thing going on there, so it feels louder. It's not necessarily electronically louder, but it feels louder.
Right. That's a great little example there.
Oh, thanks.
With the piece of paper.
Feel free to use it.
And one thing I've noticed is, for instance, one show that I produce is called Macro Voices, and they hired this voiceover guy to record the bumpers for their show, the intro and outro, whatever. And this guy's a voiceover guy, and his signal it could be the most compressed voice I've ever heard. Wow. It is like solid block. No.
Or they squashed it.
They killed it. They squashed it to death. Like, not to death, because it actually doesn't sound bad, but you can hear the compressor like whining and crying, saying, stop.
Yeah, you don't want that, because, if you're too extreme, when they get loud, it's going to pull the audio down and you're going to hear it.
So my challenge is, and maybe you can comment on this, my hosts, they have regular microphones, and I compress them a little when I mix it, and of course it gets compressed more when I master it. But when you put two voices next to each other, one of which is compressed to death and the other one which is normal, it's almost tricky to level them.
Yeah, that's true. And
before mastering.
Yeah, exactly. And if you leave it like that, it's just going to call attention to itself, and your listener's not going to be listening to the content. They're going to be listening to what's wrong. And they may not even know what's wrong, but they'll know something's wrong.
Right. So what I have to do is I put the host voice normal volume, and I literally take the voiceover guy and I bring him down a lot. Like
that's actually a good trick, yeah.
Maybe even like, I don't even know how many dB lower than it sounds right, but I bring him down. Let's call it 3 dB on the fader. Just bring it down 3 dB. So when I'm listening to the mix, it sounds like the voiceover guy's voice it sounds like his volume is low. But when you master it, then it sounds fine, because the mastering compressor is mainly compressing the host's voice, and it doesn't really touch the voiceover guy.
Yeah,
because his voice is low.
That's actually a good approach, I think. Yeah,
it kind of works. I'm still not completely happy with it. I've been thinking about maybe I have to compress the host voices more. Maybe I have to smash them more.
Maybe, yeah, because I think sometimes, if there's like big differences between the host and the guest voice, again, your listener might not technically know what's going on, but they're going to sense something's not quite right, and then they're not listening to the content, and they're listening to what I don't know what's wrong. There's something wrong if they don't just turn it off altogether.
Right. Totally. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but this has been a fabulous conversation, and I think you have to come back at some point, because
that would be fun.
I would love that, because there's a lot more we need to talk about, and you're teaching audio as well, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah, at Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia College in Chicago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Columbia College in Chicago. So we have a lot to talk about, but this has been great, Mary. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Mary Mazurek, audio engineer, WFMT radio for the past 20. What's your website, Mary?
Okay, my personal website is marymazurek.com. So it's MaryMazurek. Or you can find some stuff about me and some of the programs I do at WFMT.com. They did a couple years ago an Engineer Appreciation Day, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, I know.
Cool.
Like, really, nobody ever pays attention to us unless something's wrong.
Exactly.
But it tells you a little bit about, I'm on there with some stories, and we actually have, I think, 5 freelance engineers who do music for us. So a little bit about them. We have one 3-time Grammy Award-winning engineer. He's pretty awesome. Chris Willis. He does stuff for us, and we're all they're all really great. They're all really
Nice.
great. And then we have some of our programming up for podcast, and these are programs that have previously aired on our station. So the ones I do are called Live from WFMT, the Dame Myra Hess Memorial Concert, and I engineer most of the impromptu broadcasts.
Impromptu. I like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
hey, Mary, go take some microphones over to 51 South Street. We're going to do some recording.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Usually they're in studio, but it's like somebody's in town performing. Hey, come on the show, play some music, to have some talk,
Nice. And
Yeah.
so you're thinking about a podcast show. What are you thinking about doing?
I am. I'm thinking, okay, since my background is classical music, but I like all kinds of music and I know tons of musicians. So I was thinking of having like an interview style show where classical musicians talk to musicians of other genres. Because you know what? It's really kind of cool because I know this concert violinist and she's very, very accomplished and very talented. She loves metal. She actually plays thrash metal on her violin.
Right.
So I actually did a video podcast with the Grammy Award organization, and I had her sit down with Charlie Benante of Anthrax.
Yes.
And it was so awesome.
Wow.
So if you're an Academy member, you can see the video, but I figured, you know what, I think people would be interested in this. So, and if I can get people to Skype in, or now I know your cast system, maybe that's a way to go. I can have them, call in and we can talk music, because really we like to compartmentalize everything, but really it's all music and
Right.
it's the universal language.
Totally. Well, this
So-
has been great. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
That'll be a great show. And thank you for listening. I hope you got something out of this. I'm sure you did. This was tremendous. A lot of these episodes are just tremendous. I'm learning so much. I can't imagine what you're learning. So thanks for listening to the Podcast Engineering Show. Again, our website, podcastengineeringschool.com. This fall, I'm going to have our first workshop, probably on EQ and compression, and maybe a few other things as well. But thanks for listening. I hope your engineering is going well. And until next time, sound great.
Walk away from me well, and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control well, it's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, written down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. You change your attitude well. You say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. Gave up on me well, so change your game and give away. Say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now, it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. I want you to know you were always true. I've gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold that meaning. Does it mean